Now here's my alternative definition to the currently held definition of veganism by the Vegan Society that I personally think captures much more of what animal rights activists have in mind when calling themselves vegan and, doing vegan things and following the vegan philosophy. Hey, what is going on, guys? So today we're going to be discussing the commonly cited vegan definition from the Vegan Society by many vegans and why I think there are many problems that come with using and operating under the definition and why we should basically use something else. I will also be covering a past construction of the definition from the vice president of the Vegan Society in 1951 that I actually believe was much more fit for the goal of animal rights than the currently established vegan definition from the Vegan Society. Toward the end of the video, I will also be giving my alternative definition that I think we should be operating from that doesn't run into all of the same problems that the current definition does. I've already strongly covered my problems with the definition in one of my more recent videos covering Cosmic Skeptic and Michaela Peterson, but I still wanted to make a video fully dedicated to my issues, partially because it may be in the works for me and a couple of big other activists to reach out to the Vegan Society in the form of a write-up to try to contact them and, have them reword the definition and operate under something else. And this video should be a great assistance in developing that write-up. So guys, this is all the more reason for you to fully engage with this video in the hopes that we can, get more vegans on board with it and maybe get the Vegan Society's attention and get them to possibly change the definition or just change the wording. But yeah, if you've seen the Cosmic Skeptic video, there will be some points here that will be repeated from that video, but there will also be new things. So please stick around, especially because, the algorithm and, the more you watch of this video, the more likely this video will be suggested to others. And the more people will obviously see it and will have more backing for this potential change in the definition for veganism. And let it be made clear that I am not just one of a few activists who hold these opinions toward the Vegan Society's definition of veganism. Many vegan activists do, and I've seen these problems raised many times over the last couple years. So I wanted to make a singular video just going over the issues with the definition. So here we are. Let's start with the definition, my problems with the definition, my alternative definition, and then past definitions that have been uttered by members of the Vegan Society back in the 1900s that I actually pretty much agree with. So the current definition of veganism reads, veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension, promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of animals, humans, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals. So here's the main part of the definition that I take issue with, which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals. This seems like a very utilitarian-based kind of definition as opposed to a rights-based definition. According to this definition, the more vegan thing to do between two decisions will always be the one which excludes animal suffering and death as far as is possible and practicable. In other words, the decision which reduces animal suffering and death the most. There was no consideration for the nature of the killing in question and whether a specific type of killing counts or qualifies as a rights violation between the two decisions. You'll see by the end of this video that I simply wish to extend the positions we already hold for humans to animals in regard to preventing rights violations over preventing the most suffering. Solely caring about suffering reduction is a problem because there are many clear cases in which a person who is interested in preserving human or animal rights would not choose the option which reduce animal or human suffering the most. Take, for example, hunting a deer because doing so entailed less death than, say, incidental deaths in crop production. Is hunting deer for food now considered more vegan than buying vegan foods in this scenario? That is what the current Vegan Society's definition would have to entail, given that hunting the deer is the decision which most reduces suffering. My issue here is that in the human scenario, we don't consider incidental human deaths in industry to be rights violations. If we knew a certain amount of humans died in crop field accidents, which by the way they do, and simultaneously knew that we could just hunt a random human for food, which would in turn cause less human death than buying crop foods, would we consider it ethical to just go ahead and murder random people for food instead? Another scenario with humans where doing the thing that reduces suffering most isn't what we tend to think we should do is killing one person in order to extract their organs and save 5 people on the way to organ failure. Yes, the decision reduces suffering most, but we consider the murder of the innocent person whose organs are extracted to be a rights violation. If 5 cows are on the way to organ failure, and we go ahead and kill a healthy cow and save the other 5 cows, would we consider doing this to be vegan? The currently held vegan definition by the Vegan Society would. Imagine in the human case that there was a condition that 5 people were suffering from, and we could forcibly conduct a trial on a singular healthy person, which would result in their death, that would give us the cure for the other 5 people's condition. Would we consider the forcible testing to be an unjustifiable human rights violation? Of course. But under the Vegan Society's definition for veganism, if this were to be a situation with cows, it would be vegan to conduct the testing. The current Vegan Society definition also allows for killing animals out of need, which we do not necessarily accept as moral in the case of humans. This can be seen in the part stating, veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. The phrase, as far as is possible and practicable, is very nebulous and ambiguous, and we'll cover other problems that extend from this phrase later, but for now, let's acknowledge how this part of the definition allows for killing out of need. When you say as far as is possible and practicable, you are allowing for the killing of animals out of need because not doing so is impracticable when you need to. And we simply do not necessarily hold these kinds of positions for human rights. And in all honesty, guys, just a quick side note, the framing of this part seems rather anthropocentric, seeing as it allows humans to just kill animals if it isn't practicable for them to not in order to survive. For example, if a human is in need of a pig valve to live, under this definition, it is technically vegan for them to go ahead and murder a pig for their valve because they are acting in line with what is most practicable to them. In the case of human rights, do we consider it pro-human rights or the most pro-human rights thing to do to go ahead and murder a human for their valve when you need one? Of course not. And just another side note, if a vegan is going to say that it is vegan and ethical to kill a pig for their valve out of need, I would be curious to know if you hold the same position for killing humans for their valves when you need one. If not, what is the morally relevant difference between humans and a pig such that it is ethical to kill a pig for a valve when you need one, but not a human? Is the difference intelligence? Would that mean that it's ethical to kill mentally handicapped humans who show no greater degree of intelligence than a pig for their valve out of need? I certainly hope not. So here lies my first issue with the Vegan Society's definition. It doesn't seem to run as a logical extension of human rights to animal rights. The fact is that we just don't always consider it pro-human rights or the most pro-human rights thing to do to make a decision that reduces human suffering the most, or another decision, which is where you kill a human, but out of need. Take the organ failure example, the testing on a human to save 5 humans example, the hunting humans over buying crops example, or even the killing a human for their valve that you need example. We simply don't consider these accounts of human murder and testing to be pro-human rights or the most human rights thing for you to do in those situations because those accounts of murder and testing qualify clearly as rights violations. But the currently held vegan definition by the Vegan Society allows for these things toward animals and does not take into account whether actions are rights violations or not. It seems to primarily value suffering reduction and even justifies killing animals out of need for humans, which is rather anthropocentric and anti-animal rights. This all clearly demonstrates that the currently held definition for veganism held by the Vegan Society does not entail a logical extension of human rights to animal rights. Let's now touch on how nebulous and ambiguous the words are in the definition, possible and practicable. What exactly do these words mean in the definition? Does this mean that because it is technically possible and practicable to not exceed daily needed calories per day to survive, that consuming an excess of calories derived from plants is not considered vegan because doing so is not excluding animal suffering and death, specifically from crop deaths, as much as is possible and practicable? Are vegan bodybuilders eating in a calorie surplus who are hence causing more crop deaths than they otherwise would have caused had they just consumed their base needed amount of calories not vegan because they are not excluding animal suffering and death as far as is possible and practicable? What about vegans who attend a vegan potluck and consume an overabundance of calories one night? Are all of these vegans not vegan because they could have practiced otherwise? But then one may say that it isn't practicable to pay this close attention to your calories this much, and therefore it is still vegan to overconsume calories. But what does that mean? I know for me, I could totally tend to the standard. So maybe it's more or less practicable for certain humans. Are people who practically can watch their calories this closely not vegan for overconsuming calories, but the people who are too preoccupied to practically track their calories this much still vegan even though they're overconsuming calories? What if somebody claims they're addicted to a certain animal food and they claim it is not practicable for them to stop eating steak? Is their consumption of steak now vegan? What if somebody just finishes a giant vegan meal and has no access to vegan food for 12 hours, but gets very hungry at 10 hours of waiting? Are they doing the vegan thing and going to a steakhouse because in their view, it wasn't practicable for them to wait another 2 hours? So in summary, there are 3 basic problems with the currently held vegan definition by the Vegan Society. Here they are. Number 1, it seems to be a suffering reduction based definition as opposed to a rights based definition. Number 2, it doesn't seem to entail a logical extension of human rights to animal rights. And number 3, the phrase possible and practicable is extremely ambiguous and vague and leads to weird scenarios where people aren't technically vegan for overconsuming calories and killing out of need is considered vegan. Hey, what's up guys? So just a quick interruption. What you're seeing right now was actually filmed after this video was already fully done. And I'm showing it now because there is some other points I thought of that I hadn't thought of while making this video that I felt I should include, which suggests we should change the definition of veganism according to the Vegan Society and just, in general. So I don't know where I'm gonna put this video in the original video, but it'll be somewhere and I'll try to make it as not awkward as possible. So here we go. So what I thought of was how the definition of veganism according to the Vegan Society only pertains to the word animal when talking about who we should be protecting as opposed to non-human sentient beings. I find this problematic because this puts us in a scenario where it would technically be considered vegan to torture a hypothetical sentient non-human animal being such as a plant. According to the definition, it would be more vegan to torture and kill a sentient plant over a non-sentient animal such as a sponge. Now I know this is just a little weird hypothetical, but please hear me out. I'm just pointing out that our intuitions as vegans clearly point toward protecting the rights of non-human sentient beings, not animals. We don't try to avoid violating the rights of and cause suffering to animals because they are animals, but because they can suffer and are sentient. With all this in mind, I think it's pretty clear that veganism intended to protect the rights of non-human sentient beings, not just animals per se. And therefore, there's clearly a problem with this aspect of the definition, only using the word animal. And you'll see how this is addressed in my reformulation of the vegan definition and what I think we should operate from here on out. Now here's my alternative definition to the currently held definition of veganism by the Vegan Society that I personally think captures much more of what animal rights activists have in mind when calling themselves vegan and, doing vegan things and following the vegan philosophy. A moral philosophy which seeks to extend basic human rights to non-human sentient beings. Now, maybe there can be a detail covering how by basic rights we don't mean the right to vote or drive, although we already don't give these rights to certain mentally handicapped humans, so you would think this is obvious and maybe doesn't need to be stated. Who really knows? And before we end this video, I do want to cover a past writing from Leslie Cross, who was the past vice president for the Vegan Society back in 1951. This writing does suggest to me that the alternative definition I'm offering is much more in line with the goals of the original creators of the Vegan Society than the current goals suggested by the current vegan definition that the Vegan Society holds. He wrote this in a publication in Vegan News. Recently, the Vegan Society adopted revised and extended rules which, among other things, clarify the goals toward which the movement aspires. The Society's object and meaning of the word veganism, which have until now been matters of inference and personal predilection, are now defined as follows. The object of the Society shall be to end the exploitation of animals by man, and the word veganism shall mean the doctrine that man should live without exploiting animals. The Society pledges itself to seek to end the use of animals by man for food, commodities, work, hunting, vivisection, and all other uses involving exploitation of animal life by man. The effect of this development is to make veganism unique among movements concerned with animal welfare, for it is crystallized as a whole and not, as are all other such movements, as an abstraction. Where every other movement deals with a segment and therefore deals directly with practices rather than with principles, veganism is itself a principle from which certain practices logically follow. If, for example, the vegan principle is applied to diet, it can at once be seen why it must be vegetarian in the strictest sense and why it cannot contain any foods derived from animals. One may become a vegetarian for a variety of reasons: humanitarian, health, or meal preference for such a diet. The principle is a matter of personal feeling and varies accordingly. Veganism, however, is a principle that man has no right to exploit the creatures for his own ends, and no variation occurs. Vegan diet, therefore, is derived entirely from fruits, nuts, vegetables, grains, and other wholesome non-animal products, and excludes flesh, fish, fowl, eggs, honey, and animal milk and its derivatives. So it seems like the past members of the Vegan Society already had a principled and rights-based approach to veganism and animal rights, but primarily objecting to things like exploitation by man as a sort of rights violation. And you'll see their account of veganism even objected to hunting. So I don't see it as impossible for the Vegan Society to, see this video or see a future write-up to them concerning the problems with their definition and reverting back to a definition that is a bit more rights-based. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment, like, engage, share, get this video out there, get conversations started. Please no, toxic, insulting each other in the comments instead of, having actual rational arguments and discussion. Please, none of the toxic stuff. If you support my work and want to support me on Patreon, you can click the link below and get early access to videos as well as other perks. And if you don't know, I do have a book going over all, if not most, of the anti-vegan arguments you're going to hear online and what the debunks are for those. So if you want to get that, that'll also be linked below. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Dude,
fuck off. I don't want anything to do with you. Don't ever speak to me again. You're a fucking piece of shit.
Even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude,